Everyone, this is David Pike, the MotorCity mechanic. In today's video, we're going to be doing some maintenance work on this Ford F550. And it's equipped with the 6.7 liter diesel engine. So a lot of what you're going to see in this video will apply to different years and different series of the trucks, whether it's the F350, 450, or 550. Again, as long as it's equipped with the 6.7 liter, this video should apply. And what we're going to be doing is removing the primary fuel filter. This one has two. Primary is located on the frame rail underneath, and the secondary is on top of the engine. Again, we're going to be doing the primary, so make sure to check this video out. Now, the primary fuel filter is located under the vehicle. It's on the driver's side, on the inside of the frame rail, and just behind the transmission and transfer case on the four-wheel drive versions. Now, the assembly is kind of unique. Not only does it house the filter inside, it also has the drain, which we're used to, and the water and fuel sensor, but it's also the low pressure fuel lift pump. So there are a lot of things going on in one location here. And there's some things you need to pay attention to when you're installing the filter that could affect the lift pump if you don't pay attention. Now, the bottom of it is removable. What we're going to be doing is getting a socket on it, taking it out, and I'll show you each one of those steps. Now, the first step in replacing the filter is we need to drain the housing. Now, we need something to drain the fluid into. These right here are super cheap. You can get these at Home Depot and Lowe's. They use them for mixing concrete and mortar. I love these things because they're a large size, so that way when it's dripping or leaking, we can capture all of it. It doesn't spray everywhere. So get you some kind of container to actually get all that fuel in. So now we're ready to start draining the housing. Now, if you look over here where this yellow knob is, that's actually the valve for opening the drain. Now, the drain's right here. Now, depending on the size of your container, if you don't have something real large and you got something small, you can actually put a rubber hose on here. That way you can actually control where that fuel is going. It's an option for you. We don't need it because we got the larger pan. Now, on the valve, all we got to do is rotate it counterclockwise. And as we open it, as you can see, we start getting a steady stream of diesel. Now, while we're letting the diesel fuel drain out, we need to go ahead and disconnect that water and fuel light. It's real simple right here. You're just going to squeeze in on that connector, slide it up, we'll reposition it out of the way. Next thing we're going to do is actually start to unthread the bottom portion of the filter assembly. Now, one thing they did to help you when it comes to removing the lower portion of the housing is they gave you a place where you could actually put a 32mm socket right here. Once we install that, we actually can just turn it counterclockwise and start backing it off. As you notice, I still got the drain open. It's still draining. Put a socket on. Start turning it counterclockwise. Just take your time. At some point, you'll be able to actually just do it by hand. Now, before we take it all the way off, we're going to wait till the last bit of fuel actually drains out. As you can see, it's actually getting faster, so loosening it up actually helps with the draining. Now, at this point, we're ready to go ahead and take it off the rest of the way. Just be careful, leave your catch pan up under, because there still can be some remaining diesel inside. And this right here is your primary fuel filter. It snaps into the lower portion of the housing. This is the port that makes contact in there. Cool thing about that lift pump assembly is there are check valves in the upper portion. And when you install everything, the check valve right here, as the outer edge makes contact with it, we're open, and when you lower it down, we're actually close those valves. And that prevents the lines from actually siphoning and actually draining completely empty. So that way there's actually some fuel in the line every time. So what we need to do now is we need to go ahead and clean this housing out, make sure there's no debris in there. Some brake clean, dry it off, that's pretty much all we need to do. And then we get our replacement filter and snap it back in. Now, if you look real close, you can actually see some debris in the corners, which isn't abnormal. Remember, that's what this fuel filter is supposed to do. Filter out any debris before it actually gets up to the secondary filter on the engine. So we just need to dump this out. Again, start cleaning it out with some brake clean. You want to make sure there's nothing in there, especially around this ledge right here, because that's where actually the filter makes contact and it seals itself. So now that we've got that housing cleaned out, you can look down in here in the bottom. You'll see some plastic fingers. That's actually what holds the fuel filter in place. It kind of lines in, snaps on. But look real close. You'll notice we've got 3 of them broke off. There's no pieces in there, so it probably was cleaned out previously when they replaced one of the other fuel filters. No one noticed it. I don't think it's going to cause a problem. If it does, we will be replacing this. But for now, let's get our replacement fuel filter, line everything up, make sure it's fully seated. Now, before we install this on the vehicle, we do have one last thing we got to replace, and that is a green colored O-ring that's on the upper portion of this housing. And if you look up in here, you'll see that green O-ring I'm talking about. All I need is something like a pick or a flat tip screwdriver. Let's get up under the edge and kind of work it off. And what you also want to do is you want to kind of wipe up in here where that O-ring went. There might be some dust, debris. We want a good seal. So grab your rag and kind of finish it off. At that point, we're ready to go ahead and grab our replacement O-ring. Make sure we work it up in there and get it on that upper groove. Now we're ready to go ahead and grab that filter and start installing it. So now that we've replaced that O-ring, we're about ready to install the lower portion with the filter. Now there's an important thing to keep in mind. How tight do we install this? If you go too loose, you can get an improper seal here, you can get air in the system, then you got low fuel pressure codes, you got drivability issues and messages or warning lights coming on the dash. You over tighten it, you can crack the housing, possibly damage the pump inside. Now there's 2 things you need to pay attention to. Now when everything's snug down, let's look at it like this. This is one I've taken off another vehicle. This is where that frame rail is. The water and fuel sensor and the drain should be 90 degrees from the frame, 90 degrees. Another thing to pay attention to is lower portion of the housing and upper portion right here. If you look real close, you can see these 2 right here. They kind of match. It's a raised area, drops off, same thing, raised area drops off. You need to keep those in line. Once they're pretty much lined up, you've got it as tight as you need to be. Any looser, you have issues. Any tighter, you can damage it. Again, keep that in mind. And this is the same spot right here on the lower portion with it removed. We're going to be lining that up with the one on the upper portion. So at this point, we're ready to go ahead and grab that lower section, line it up, start threading it on, make sure you don't cross thread it. And if you remember when I showed you off the vehicle, the drain valve and the water and fuel sensor need to be 90 degrees to the frame rail. We'll go as far as we can by hand. That last little bit, we're actually snug up using the tool. So again, grab your 32mm socket, your ratchet, start snugging it down. And you'll kind of also feel right before it gets to right that spot, it all of a sudden kind of stops turning right there. So all we got to do now to verify that we've got it in the right position is we look up underneath and see if those 2 marks line up. If not, we either back it off or we tighten it up until we get it to that point. At this point, once that's done, we're going to grab our connector for our water and fuel sensor, plug it in, and we'll work on actually priming the system. Again, make sure you check on the side to make sure it's lined up. And when you're doing your fuel filters, make sure you do the primary and secondary. This video was strictly about the primary. Now, once you've done all that, you need to worry about priming the system, which is pretty cut and dry. The lift pump will come on every time you turn the ignition on. So all you got to do is turn the key on, and it's going to run for about 30 seconds. And we're going to consider that one cycle. Turn the key off afterwards, turn it back on, let it run till it stops. We're going to do that a total of 6 times. Afterwards, we're going to start the vehicle and we're going to let it idle for a period of time so I can get any kind of the remaining air out of the system. So make sure you do that. Again, if you're replacing the primary filter, make sure you replace the secondary. So that right there pretty much sums up everything you need to know when it's time to replace the primary fuel filter on this Ford equipped with a 6.7 liter diesel. If you liked the video, please give it a big thumbs up on YouTube. Don't forget you can find me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you got any comments or suggestions about anything you saw in today's video, leave something in the comments below. If you got a question about Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, or Ram, you can always email me at david@motorcitymechanic.com because those are the vehicles that I highly specialize in. Last but not least, if you like to shop on Amazon, which pretty much everybody does, scroll down in the description below the video. There's a link there. Click on that and make that your Amazon homepage. And anytime you buy anything, it'll help support this channel. Like always, thanks for watching.